Hey there, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the League Community Podcast. You are cursed to have me, Dylan Most Dirty, as your host today. Fortunately, guest hosting with me is the wonderful Skarzard. Please, Skarzard.
The wonderful Skarzard is not here, but the entirely passable guest host Skarzard is. We also have two people here to talk to us about Aurelion Sol, the new champion that looks something like a dragon. That you may have heard about. We have his designer, Luke Reinhard.
Yep.
Not Renard.
Hello.
Very specifically.
Got it.
And the man who scribbled a bunch of crayons and called it a story, Matt Dunn.
Yes.
I believe that's what happened.
That is correct.
It's
and you called me both a
underappreciated
man and a person, so thank you.
You're like, it's better
This is
than
off
my
to a good
parents.
start.
All right. So before we go, just putting
We're
people
setting the
fully
tone
on
here.
blast.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit of background, Luke. So what's your deal here? Obviously, you worked on Aurelion Sol, but how'd you come to be there for that?
The life story or the
Just the brief, what you do at Riot.
Yeah. So presently I'm a associate technical game designer at Riot. So I work on the champion team. I worked on Bard, was my first champion, and now Aurelion Sol is my second one.
Everyone just flipped out, by the way. They were like, oh, yeah, Luke Reinhard. Wait, Bard?
No
way.
Like 10 or 15 people just flipped out like crazy, and like everyone else is like, oh, who's oh, that guy.
Are you going to shout out to the Bard main subreddit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
guys
shout
are
out to Bard
pumped,
mains.
Yeah.
Yo.
Shout outs to r
There are dozens of us.
Bard mains. One other thing I want to interject here that a lot of people out there I don't think they could know legally. You also are one of the main reasons we have a trinket slot in League of Legends.
That's true. So before I was a designer, I was an engineer on the game, and before that, the patcher, and before that, build. And yeah, I've been here a long time. But yeah, I did a lot of work for season 3. That was season 3.
Yeah. That was season 3.
To get that stuff into the game. So
Yeah, we were like, but we could never have a 7th item slot.
Yeah.
Seventh item slot.
And Luke was just there like, hello, I've come from the patcher. What did you need? And we were like, oh, can you carve out a trinket slot? He's like, poultry, it will be done in the morning.
hold on, let me return the smoke machine first. I'm at the entrance and now
It was definitely pretty mysterious. Matt,
in the way.
I want to know, how did you get involved in this whole mess known as
Man, you're really just selling this thing.
Yeah.
I know, just how did you come to be a writer first and foremost?
To be a writer?
Yeah. Did you
I
just-
made a lot of poor life decisions.
yeah,
I
leading up
did
to
not
this point?
listen to my family.
Okay.
Matt, what did they
Be a
want you to be?
doctor.
That gives
Yeah.
you lots
Be a
of
lawyer.
Yeah.
that gives you lots to write about, though, right?
And then you wrote them
Yeah.
enough angry responses that you were like, oh, God, this could just be me.
Actually, it was the day I got a refund at Six Flags Great Adventure, where I wrote a very strongly worded letter and got everybody like $100 back. That was the day I was like, calling.
There it is.
What a weird thing.
Yeah,
What?
right?
I think it's specific enough, though, that I'm happy that it's like a cornerstone moment, like a really defining thing.
And Matt's great struggle has provided him the background that he needs to get to where he is today.
Yes.
And to write the story for this thing that looks like a dragon, according
Yeah.
to Patrick, who's
well,
apparently
I
trying
think
to get the
more
podcast
correctly, he is a celestial being.
It's a dragon-esque entity.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm trying
He's
to
chosen
say.
the form of a dragon, perhaps.
Or maybe all dragons have chosen their form after him.
There is a line that indicates that might be true.
That is deep.
Why'd
Wow.
I get deep voice?
Pale
like
imitation.
Yeah, I know.
don't know.
That was like, at any
And a
moment
real
you want to
intense
give
stare.
some trivia, you need to like deliver it as if it's the cliffhanger to the episode.
I think it's
And
having
that's
a
it.
microphone like right in front of you that makes you feel like you need to say something really like deep and meaningful.
Well,
like you're in a-
well, let's talk about some things that are both deep and meaningful. Very specifically, I don't want us to spend the whole show on it, but we have to talk about Ao Shin. There's no reason that there's no way we can do a podcast about Aurelion Sol without talking about his technical forefather. So for those of you who are not in the loop somehow, we announced we were working on a storm dragon, a very like Chinese influenced kind of Eastern dragon called Ao Shin.
This is almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, this is a very, very long time ago. And that was it, actually. We never really talked about him since. There was no extra look at the kid. It was just some concept art. But naturally, and you can't blame people for that, there was kind of an expectation like, oh, when is Ao Shin coming out? Like, where is Ao Shin going to be? Such that when it actually came time to do Aurelion Sol, we were all like, oh, God, we have to like deal with that somehow. So why, Luke, in your own words, because I know you were kind of just joining the team at the time, how did it come to this, right? How did we decide Ao Shin was kind of a no-go?
Right. I think it was sort of a complex decision, but I think the main point of it was that Aoshin was very directly a mythological beast that sort of existed in mythology already. And I think the real impetus was that we wanted to make a character that was uniquely League of Legends, that takes the sort of expected and puts a twist on it and makes it really interesting and unique. So that's sort of where we started out from. We said, okay, there's something really cool in this archetype of dragon, because the dragons we have in the game are very, like, I guess you could say Western. They're the big scaly winged fire breathing kind of dragon.
You have the Skyrim one in that you slay for buffs, and then you have Shyvana that is only really half dragon, honestly.
Right. But there is a whole different sort of lineage of dragons that do cool things that are new and unique and different we don't have in the game. It's not represented. So we thought there was a lot of cool stuff there, and we're like, okay, let's make that kind of dragon, something different.
And so I think part of it as well is just that it was we've seen this before where an idea floats around internally, kind of waiting for the time during which it will really kind of hit where it needs to be, and there will be designers who are there at that moment to get excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that was kind of the case with this. We said we were going to do it, but we just never really had that kind of like, that whole team that really united behind a concept and was really willing to push it forward until more recently, right?
I think the Aoshin project was around for long enough that the original people that were excited about it moved to other teams or were doing other things, and the idea of the vision holder. There wasn't a vision holder for Aoshin by the time it kind of came around to me and our team. So we sort of said, well, okay, rather than trying to like guess what somebody else thought was cool about this, let's like on between us figure out what we think is awesome and drive towards that and make that a reality.
And I remember very distinctly the conversation where we had with the producers asking what specifically did we have to be beholden to from the old Aoshin concept, and the answer was refreshingly that we didn't have to be beholden to very much. We were encouraged and given reins to make whatever we felt was going to be the coolest League of Legends dragon we could, and that was ridiculously freeing.
Has to be a dragon, but
has to be
do
a dragon.
do whatever you want with that.
Well, I remember you were saying specifically that if I'm correct, that you hadn't even really heard of Aoshin. Like you really weren't around at the time when that whole thing happened.
So to answer your earlier question, I came out of the world of doing freelance feature films and screenwriting and ghostwriting random books that never got produced.
All of those definitely sound like qualifications.
Yes, probably. And I played a lot of video games, and I wound up getting a wonderful invitation to kind of come and interview here at Riot, and it just clicked. And I went right on to the team. I actually worked on Bard for a little bit too. I wrote, I was a contributing writer, not the principal writer.
This is kind of the team getting back together.
Almost.
This is round two.
This is the weird shit team.
Cosmic
Boogaloo.
Yeah.
I didn't do very much, just kind of like, edited up a story sketch and helped out a bit.
I can imagine you in the back of the room. What if he made sound? They're like, who said that? Great job, Luke. What do you think?
I think that my first week they put me in a room with Luke and they're like, so what is the instrument? And I was like, they're like, I just started. An oboe? I don't know.
Yeah. Everyone all like, Matt, tell us.
That's
tell
exactly
us the
what the
story of
meeting.
this character. You're like, I don't even have my parking spot yet.
Yeah.
Like, how can you do this?
Yeah, Bard's instrument write took weeks too. You wouldn't think so, but it was just like, is it like a flute or like, yeah.
Does he hold it up when he walks, or is he the instrument?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, things like that. Well, so
sorry.
No.
Oh, and from there it was just like onto Echo, right into Echo, and right into kind of Kindred. And along that time, I'd heard about Aoshin, and it kept bubbling up at the start of every ideation process. At that point, there were only two of us, two writers who were actively developing champions under the guidance of a third writer.
You and Odin.
Odin, yeah.
There's an actual. I bring that up because I need people outside of this room to know that there is a real human being, really named Odin, that writes champions at League of Legends.
Do you want to know my nerd thing about Odin?
What's your nerd thing about Odin?
So his name is Odin. So like, thunder, lightning, and all that. And there's an item in Diablo called Schaefer's Hammer that puts lightning
and his
around
name is
you.
Odin Schaefer.
Yeah. And
Yeah, there you go.
It's just a little
No,
thing.
that's pretty fantastic. Well, you were mentioning earlier. I believe the quote was you played a game of Ow Chicken.
Yes.
With Odin. Explain to me about that.
So at the start of every ideation that we would talk about our new champions, one of the producers would always be like, does the pod feel good about doing Ao Shin or doing a dragon? Because we told players that we're going to make a dragon.
Well, and to be clear, when you say pod, you're talking about the process by which we have a couple fairly flexible teams that over time are rotating between projects as they go through.
Yeah, the champion team, as people think of it, is actually like 3
different mini
teams.
Yeah,
that kind of all share resources.
Yeah, and projects take a lot longer than the champion release cadences. So like we want to have them all kind of
rotating
together.
And we gather at the very beginning of when we say that there's a new thing we want to do or a new itch we want to scratch, and it's usually the designers, the narrative folk, and the artists, the concept artists who kind of come together, the DNA as we call it.
So clever.
And we're fun. And then we add producers and animators and
that acronym just hit me like a bag of bricks.
Wow. I bet you guys were so happy on the day you came up with that. Well, that was like meeting done, folks.
That was like the producer was like,
it
could be DNA, and right up on the board. It's actually a really apt. It kind of sounds silly, but it's actually really apt because it actually is the core thing that builds the champion is between the narrative and the designer and the artist, and it's not like I've thrown in a bunch of narrative ideas and like artists have thrown in design ideas. It's like everybody kind of is cross-pollinating ideas.
We're all supporting each other, and people are always pitching stories. The story kind of helps inform, design and how they look, and how they look informs what we write.
That's always it's always something that's kind of surprised me and really actually just made me happy about how it comes out, because it seems like such a good process, is that, champions are the centerpiece of what is by all accounts a pretty big game at this point. And in the end, though, they often come down to such an individual approach. You guys have teams, but it's super open to, as you guys have mentioned, like I've seen a sound guy when I've been observing throw out a design idea that ends up making its way in, and different designers are really allowed to do things in different ways. And
it goes I think, especially when it comes down to writing champion VO lines. I mean, they come from across the company. And people are always welcome to, pitch ideas and pitch lines. And as long as they fit in the cadence of the character or can be tweaked to work so, it goes in.
Awesome. So you were saying that every time a pod was coming around to its new project for a while, the topic of Ao Shin would be lightly broached. And then what would happen?
You start planning a couple champions ahead. You're like, okay, if I do Echo, that means that I can convince Odin to do a fishman, and if he does the fishman, then I know that this
tentacles.
Guy, and then so it was Odin and I kind of, I think, passing the buck a little bit, kind of a little tentative, not wanting to dive there.
So we've talked about a little bit of the transition from Ao Shin, but I want to know, what was it for you, Matt, specifically as a narrative human, where it really was kind of the turning point, where you felt like you were like, no longer do I feel like passing the buck. It's like we've gotten together. We said this is going to be the Dragon Pod, and like, when did it really come together for you that you started to feel like, okay, we are actually headed in a direction that I'm really excited about?
It was actually during Kindred. I had an idea to do a weird cosmic Targon 3-eyed sniper that would just go and like, it was
we should
weird.
Talk after this.
We should, yeah. It was not a great pitch or well thought out, but I really liked the idea of cosmic sniper, 3 eyes, weird, like spacey kind of stuff. And I think it was one of the artists, Chris Campbell, was like, just save that for Dragon. And I think he was saying it as a joke, as a nice way to kill the pitch, and put it in like just bury it,
go to bed.
Put it
but
somewhere else.
Not you. He didn't know who he was talking to.
No, he had no idea.
Wait a minute.
Matt stayed up for weeks drawing 3-eyed cosmic sniping dragons in his bedroom, ready to one day present them to the pod.
You say it like that. I'm not going to.
The narrator.
I'm not going to refute that.
That's
AM.
Retconned. Is that how it went down?
That's exactly how it went down. I'm
Well then, Luke, for you, because I remember seeing. I mean, we were kind of earlier. We were talking about like the very, very, very old Ao Shin kit, like when the first one was in production, where had a global ability that made it rain. And then please, if you can describe to the table here the ultimate that was on
And be clear, this is all really old, really crazy work in progress.
Yeah,
stuff
it's really
from
old. And
years
some,
ago
of
at this
some
point.
of it was like legitimately really cool, but also had a lot of problems and just wasn't quite hanging together. But yeah, the ultimate, the one I think you're talking about anyway, was which honestly I think could resurface sometime because it was rad. It was Global Lee Sin Q. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. He shot out a cloud, and the cloud got
bunch
bigger
of smiley
and
clouds.
bigger. They were cute little smiley clouds. They got bigger as they traveled, and if they hit you, he would reactivate it to turn into lightning and travel across the map and just kick the shit out of you when he gets there.
What?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then they were like, "What?" But we got
Wait, is that a
no,
real?
That
wait.
was the ultimate.
That was the ultimate?
Okay.
That was Ao Shin.
That was before that was
Holy.
the kit that I kind of inherited. Was like
Yeah.
the final Ao Shin kit was that.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he also
there you
had
go.
That's-
take on Chain Lightning, and he had like this global rain thing that like it made
He
wet,
could also
which
turn into
just,
a
like,
cloud.
that
You just could pass through him.
Sorry,
It
yeah,
was,
so-
See, this was
anyway,
like
there were a
all
lot of
before
rains
my
that-
time.
rainy things.
Yeah.
Is that a status effect? Made you wet? Like, what does that do?
it was.
it was
do
in
I
a
slow
tooltip,
down?
Dylan. I could fish it out of my email to maybe find it.
Yeah, but it was. I'm actually not totally sure. It caused some of his effects to like multiply, and I don't know. It was really kind of
he's lightning.
heady.
So
Yeah,
probably-
he's a storm
Like
dragon.
the
Yeah.
lightning hits
Get
you
your
harder.
head out of the gutter,
Okay,
Dylan.
wow.
He's
But he
made
would-
of
and
lightning.
it's actually
Wow.
kind
He
of
would-
tricky for like doing storm stuff because we kind of already have characters that do like Janna's got a lot of that stuff going, so it's like finding new space in storms.
Yeah, it's like
can be
Janna
tricky.
and Kennen are kind of your like
Kennen's
either
already like.
spectrum of like lightning storm.
So you
Right.
thought we
Oh,
don't-
and
we
Volibear.
already-
Don't forget Volibear Ultimate for Chain Lightning.
Oh, I will forget Volibear.
you thought
Ultimate.
we
Just
already-
like Volibear players will forget Volibear's Ultimate.
We already have lots of storm and lightning, but you know what we don't have? A cosmic three-eyed sniper dragon.
From Targon.
Ship it.
Okay, so really though, what was that moment? Like, it sounds like Ao Shin was floating around for a while. There was even a bit of a wacky paper kit. Where what got it to the point where it's like, whoa, we're actually going to go this way, and we have a clear vision.
It was there was that one meeting where we pitched a ton of different dragon ideas, and it lasted like, this is how our ideation typically starts. It's like 2-3 weeks of just solid pitches. People are drawn dragons from, we had Hextech golem style dragons, river dragons, stone dragons, fire dragons, all sorts of dragons. It was like a cheap discount hut of dragons that you could kind of go and pick from. And it was the star one that kind of just kept sticking, and it kept sticking. And it was kind of this neat idea. It's like you don't see a lot of star or cosmic dragons, and it just felt right. And I think we all kind of, I felt bad for Luke because you had just come out of Bardland and you were like, oh, I could do something relatable. Another dragon from Earth.
Something understandable that's not from space.
Back to space.
Yeah.
Try to capture that in mechanics, Luke.
Yeah.
But I think you did a really good job. I want to talk about like, where did you end up finding the inspiration for the stars, specifically the passive for Aurelion? Because I think that's
a
the
lot of
Stark
doing.
thing. Yeah.
So I guess to not answer your question, start like kind of from the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Take,
Like we
take it back.
we tried a lot of stuff because we weren't sure what dragon meant. Like we knew we wanted to make a dragon and not quite like those dragons and not quite like that dragon, but we weren't really sure what that meant. And like, yeah, what's a dragon? Well, it's big, okay, I guess, but it's like long and thin too, so not really big. And maybe they're scaly or have teeth or breathe fire. Well, not necessarily. So it took a lot of exploration to sort of zero in on the right feeling. And I think the big thing that sort of got me to the kit that we have now was Jordan Rex, who's a designer on Kindred and Braum.
Yeah.
At one point, he basically said that a dragon is basically shorthand for like awesomest wizard of. But that I needed to figure out what made this character different from a wizard in a dragon suit. And that was sort of an odd thing, but I took that to the pod and I'm like, this is it. This is the answer. And they're just like, what are you talking about? But yeah, so trying to figure out, a like space wizard sort of hangs back and like lobs stuff at you and, calls down meteors and things. And that doesn't feel like I don't know, it doesn't feel draconic to me. A dragon is inherently magic, and they have a menacing presence, whether they're big and strong or long, and it doesn't matter.
I mean, like most dragons, at least that I am aware of, maybe just the Western dragons, right, literally live in a bathtub of gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like all of the coolest stuff I can have is mine because I saw it. And so, yeah, I definitely see what you're saying here.
I was going through my notes right before we came from March, and oh my god, it's been it's over a year.
This character's been in development even as
just as Aurelion
became Aurelion Soul for a long time.
But I remember writing specifically. It's funny that you said that hoarder. Like in big, I just listed things out, and you're like, hoarder. What could he hoard? Was the next thing I typed because I typed in stream of consciousness. Then I was like, magic. 4 spaces, and I just changed the question.
You're like, and we're moving on. We're moving on.
Yeah, because like the whole point of the character was to sort of challenge some of those conventions, but not to the point where it didn't feel right anymore. So like finding the right amount of draconicness, whatever that was really tricky for me. And I'm a very experiential designer. Like I want the player who's playing my characters to feel somehow like that character, to have a different experience because they're playing this character versus another one. And I think I'm pretty happy with how Bard turned out in that regard. And I think Aurelion Soul has a fair bit of that as well. Just you feel like a menacing presence and like you're effortlessly powerful.
Yeah, I will say I've played exactly one playtest of Aurelion Soul. And this is actually something I've been doing recently is I try to know as little about the character before they hit live.
Good.
Because I want to try to get that experience. Like the first games I ever played of Jin or Alawi was on release day. You know, I'm like, oh, I kind of know, like I have that benefit. I can like ask a playtester.
But
like,
you want the like opening the present kind of experience.
And so there was one moment when this is before his VO, which makes me sad. But that's another present I'll get to open. Where for Aurelion, I was walking up to a team fight, and just by being there, I felt really cool, right? Like it's they're like fighting over red buff, and on Lux you're like, oh, I gotta like fish for a Q and then land my giant laser, and then on Aurelion I was like, wait, I am the laser, kind of, right? I'm like, just as I roll up, it's like, who wants a body massage? Just hit it, rub up on him with the stars. That's what I'm gonna be saying in all chat, by the way, when I hit rank 5 on this character. It's just gonna be who wants a body massage.
That was one of the other things he hoards, body massages.
Yeah. What does he hoard? Magic and body masseuse. Is
body massage machine go?
There's always the moment in iteration where I call it the numbskull phase, where everyone has a good idea of what they were making, and then we're stop and say, wait, what actually is a dragon? And it's like the stupidest question you can possibly think, but it actually kicks you out how simple the question is, and you start making lists. And anybody who looks at a whiteboard that you're working on at that point is like, does this person not know what a dragon is?
Yeah.
What is wrong with them? They use
this person get
breath
paid
weapon and
like
wings.
to do
like,
it?
Wow, how do they not know this? But it's
really
weird. It's a weird moment, but it makes you. I think it helped you a lot too to kind of go back and figure out what elements or the things you wanted to represent the most on Aurelion Soul.
Well, yeah, I think the first time we tried to do the "What is a dragon" exercise, we got like a word. It was like, what is a serpentine dragon? Because that was the thing we were shooting for was quote unquote serpentine dragon as sort of the differentiating archetype from Western dragon or whatever you want to call it, winged dragon. And we pretty much got as far as like long body, and then we would write down like scales, and then people like, no, I don't think so. Nope. Teeth, no.
Scales, no
claws,
scales.
nope. Like, yeah. So magic, okay, magic. So it was like that was pretty much all I had to go on was long body magic. Okay.
I find this funny because of how Aurelion regards magic. Like how he's kind of like, oh, great, yeah, magic, sick, thanks. Like he just kind of dismisses the idea. Yeah.
You have to call it a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you have to invoke the magic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I guess some of my early kid explorations, it was like, okay, well, let's just go really hard on the long body thing. Like he's serpentine body, really long, cool, great. Let's find what gameplay is there. We haven't done that before. And that went actually, the start of that was Aoshin had an in-game model. And Aoshin's in-game model was this sort of like long dragon, and it fit inside a normal character hitbox, which meant he was a pencil. He was like tiny and thin and not imposing at all. And we knew that wouldn't really work because a dragon needs to feel imposing and large. So we said, okay, well, if we can't fit him in a normal hitbox, what if we just said, forget it, make him long as heck. So I tried making gameplay around this like worm-like, really, really long dragon. Like
I remember
you
that.
know,
Yeah, let
Like,
us not
how
undersell
long
how long it was.
How many Teemos we talking?
it was 10 or 12 Teemos long. Like, and that ended up not being long enough because it was like the gameplay.
Double
like,
it.
Oh yeah. It's for it to be, like you want to wrap around people or like go between people and things. And in League, like you either have to be going way faster than everybody else, be really, really long, like screen length, or have an incredible amount of hit points in order to live long enough to do that kind of stuff. Because everybody else just runs straight at someone's face and kills them.
Yeah, I mean, every skill shot's hitting you at that point.
Yeah,
it seems
so that character would have to be a tank, and they'd have to be a mainline tank, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I never felt that was sort of doing the character justice. Like the Serpentine Dragon idea is they're about magic. They're a magical being, so they need to do magical stuff, and standing there and taking damage is not really that magical. So between sort of my misgivings about that kit and just some like technical concerns and not like just like what do we even do if this guy is sticking halfway out of brush or you only see his middle section? How do we do animations? What does it
little
look
baby
like?
feet and a tail sticking out of the brush.
Right, because like nothing in the game ever exists halfway in view because we don't know how to like because Fog of War is all fuzzy on the edges and it's like I don't even know what we would do to render that. So between those technical concerns and my misgivings with the kit, we're like, okay, hold the phone. Let's scrap that and try again.
Yeah, no more long dragon. Matt, I want to ask you about how the personality came together because I think anyone that has played Aurelion at the time of listening to this or will play Aurelion it's a big selling point of the character.
It was a very interesting process because I got to basically purchase a whole lot of books on dragons and watch a whole lot of movies about dragons. And
Oh, come on. You own at least some of those books already.
It was only one thing
about
extra
you?
I had to purchase.
yeah, I'm gonna assume you already had a dedicated dragon part of your library.
I do now.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
But it was you wanted to do something. I wanted to do something different with the personality. I didn't. So the most memorable dragon I could find in recent years had been like Smog or Parthenax from Skyrim, and those were like big influences. So when I have stuff that I like that much, I tend to want to kind of move away from them so that I don't overlap them and don't. I'd rather be inspired by them, and so we started just looking at references, and someone brought up the Great Owl from Secret of Nim. And that, yeah, that was pretty, that just like that imposing.
I'm literally too young for this reference.
Oh, man, you got to see that movie.
Patrick may have
If
the
it's
voice
something
of
to
a
make Dylan go,
52-year-old
oh,
man, but
then I know.
yeah, he's actually a youngin', but that just blew my mind, man.
So explain to me, explain to our listeners as well, what is the Great Owl?
So the Great Owl is just basically the owl that eats mice and rats and all the little creatures. And there's this, that one, I can't remember her name anymore, the one mouse who has to go to find medicine to save her son has to go see the Great Owl, and he keeps secret truths that are just basically honest. And she's, crawling over skulls of other mice that she is, as she's going to meet him, and he just speaks in this deep, imposing voice with glowing eyes. And I don't know why I said that part with his voice.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm into it. I'm like, you kind of look like an owl now. I'm going to keep that forever.
No longer Jiminy Cricket in a wind tunnel. All right.
That's or a Mike and Ike that someone stepped on.
I don't know where that one came from. I think it was me.
But yeah, I think the important thing about it is also the personality of like the Great Owl. He'll answer your question. He might still devour you, but he will dispense his wisdom.
He's willing to, and that led to basically us thinking: is this guy a hero? Is he a villain? What is his role? And for me, that tends to precede personality. I got to know: are they villainous? Are they heroic? Are they morose? What is that core? And villainous felt wrong to do for a dragon. And I think early on he hedged that way because Great Owl led us to Shere Khan and it led us to Ultron and all these great, rich, complex voices. But to divorce from the voice, we were making a star dragon, and a star dragon to me is like taking the most magical thing that you've ever had and then adding the more wondrous thing on top of it. And that was just mind blowing. And it was
magic.
Yeah, it's like double magic. And it was during a crunch time on Echo and a crunch time on Kindred, and everyone was asking who's the personality of Dragon. And I think that day I was just like, he's the most magical thing ever. I mean, he's stars and Dragon. He's David Bowie. What? And then everyone stopped and they were just like, oh my God, that's cool. And then
I can totally see that. I can see that.
Yeah. I feel like I've been in situations like that where they're like, well, that's it. That's all I needed you to say.
I get it. And I was like, good, they get it. I don't know what it means yet.
Yeah, and that's not really like embellishment.
I bought myself some time.
The meeting, it was just like, he's David Bowie. And we're all like, oh.
Everyone in their own way is taking what that means to them away from the meeting.
It was.
Constantly had people coming up to you. You're the David Bowie guy, aren't you?
Bowie guy. But what it did was it actually gave a touchstone. Like, what is it about David Bowie? And then we had a lot of great conversations about what is it when we say David Bowie. What do we mean? And what is it? And we began to realize it was this effortless thing. It was he's marvelous. He can do whatever he wants. He's beautiful. Everything he creates is inspired. He is arrogant. And I don't even know if David Bowie's arrogant. God rest his soul. He seemed like a brilliant, beautiful man.
Yeah.
And he just, if he was arrogant, I probably wouldn't give a shit. You're like, he's
entirely deserved.
He deserves it. Exactly.
Yeah, this seems very much like the rock stars of that era, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about rock stars almost in abstract, but like David Bowie's a nice touchstone where it's just like, he's on stage and he, you can't reach out and touch him, but he's just there and he's amazing and he's got ridiculous makeup on, but he like completely owns it and he's
speaking just to you. And that's, I think, what it connected with me is that when I look at the stars, I think they mean something very, very special to just me or just us. And it's very much like a musician and a rock star because they're singing a song and you're singing in your car too. And you're like, man, they get it. They get it. The song is my song. I get it. They get me. Yeah, and there was that element to what people would think of when they look at a dragon that worked for me.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's just sort of this spin on it too, which is like the rock star will like the rock star sort of an abstract will make demands of like the hotel room has to be just like this, or he won't deign to talk with his fans, or like he's only gonna do signatures for 5 minutes and he's gonna go. Like it's their sort of. They have to have things their way, and because their way is the right way for what they're doing.
Yeah. If there are red Skittles in here, I can't work.
Exactly.
I need only yellow Skittles for my chi.
Right. So
things like that. Yeah.
Matt talked about not wanting to make a villainous character, and that's not villainous, right? But it is sort of this negative aspect. It's not just this like goody two shoes like I'm all happy and stars are great. It's like he's an artiste.
Yeah.
And he has very particular tastes. And
we had a very strong conversation. Was he preening? Did he want attention?
Yeah, was he vain?
To the idea, was he vain? And it was like, no, I don't think David Bowie and these elder statesmen of rock are very vain. I think they are just naturally apart, but they don't. For me, he always never seemed the kind of guy who sought that much attention. It was about the work. It was about the show. It was about that kind of stuff, and it was very similar to Reese.
Yeah, he was an artist, and he did things his way. Yeah, that was the only way it would be done, and that was all there was to it.
And so we needed a reason for him to be in the world, and the idea of Targon kept cropping up because that seems to be like our resident celestial sort of area because we just only had Bard and stars in the star area for a while.
Yeah, we knew this guy wasn't going to be like from Runeterra, right? He didn't just like pop up somewhere.
Yeah, what were his motivations? Because I think you, especially, and you rightfully drove on us to give him a more relatable motivation, something tangible that we could get behind, and we came up with the idea that he had signed a bad record deal with Targon Records, and and was now basically had to go play birthday parties and do the things that they didn't really want to do or need him to do. And
memes will be born.
Yeah, I'm so ready for this. Well, this is interesting that you bring this up, the like not wanting to be from Runeterra, because I remember a couple years ago when I had started, I always hung out with the narrative crew, and they kind of explained to me very easily that in our past we've made a couple missteps in the sense of like, oh, where's this new character from? I don't know, he's from some place, whatever, but he's here now, right? Or things like, what about this guy? It's like we have in the very, very, very first draft, I call it, of League of Legends lore, it's like you have, I want to say like 10 characters that are just from a different planet, right? It's like it doesn't really say where they're from, it doesn't describe the planet, it's just they're there, right? And so, for our world, it's like, well, if we're thinking otherworldly, for a long time it was just the void, right? And there's a lot of cool stuff that comes out of the void, and that's why I was always really personally encapsulated by Bard, right? Because you're like, wow, well, we don't even have to explain where he is because he's everywhere, he's nowhere. Is he even real?
He's like transdimensional. Like he's not even from like. He's not from here in any meaning of the word here.
Yeah, trying to describe where he is from is missing the point.
Yes, it can only be described in like noises.
And I think for Aurelion Soul, we, the idea of it had to be more than just where he was from. Like, we don't actually start and say, we want to make a character from Piltover, we want to make a character from Zon. Like, that usually comes later when we figure out who the character is. And for us to make a Star Dragon that comes from the stars worked. And to have that touchstone of David Bowie, which was helpful to get us to the next stage, was really, those moments are we strive for them pretty often. That's where our references come from. That's where they really help us out. And with him, we wanted to give him a very, easy motivation, right? A simple motivation that you can understand. And it was he was fighting the wars that Targon didn't want to fight, or they couldn't fight for whatever reason. And that he felt that this was a gross misuse of his creative powers. Yeah. And
his
so
art.
he wants to be back in the heavens creating stars. And if you can't help him get back there, you better be entertaining at least. And I think that's
he's supremely uninterested in most things you have to say or do.
Yes,
so,
but sometimes you pique his interest. He's like, that's sort of how he came to be. That's sort of how he came to run into Targon in the first place. I think he was like, what's this like life thing, and what are they up to? And
I was gonna say, how does a cool heaven guy like Aurelion Soul end up
dragon-esque being?
Yeah, the celestial body known as Aurelion Soul.
Ooh,
how does that person even come to be part of Targon, right? Like, this seems like, how do you make that kind of misstep, man?
It's all it takes is you pick the wrong person sometimes. And I think with Dragon, the way we've been approaching him is that he, was alone in the universe for so long creating stars, and then he started to see these eyes open up and behold his works, and he would, kind of peek in and be kind of, amused by like what they thought of the stars and how they kind of created all these, they drew lines between the stars and called them pictures, and that's felt kind of like a very bold thing for them to do. So he descended. He wanted to go meet a couple of them. So he picked the one that looked like they were the smartest and most furthest along in the civilizational scale. And
he doesn't think we're the smartest anymore.
Oh,
it sounds like he's over it.
Yeah, it was Targon, and they kind of they tricked him. They gave him that star kind of star crown, and that was it.
Well, yeah, in a way,
it bound him.
They were the first to ever flatter him. And he succumbed to that really, really kind of almost blindly, because it's like, wow, that never happened before.
They gave me a gift.
They appreciate my work. Yeah. Look at this gift. And then, it ended up being it just ended up sort of roping him into doing stuff that he didn't really want to do. Because he'd much rather just be up making more great works in the sky.
Yeah, it sounds interesting because, he's a, I guess, quote unquote Targon champion in that is where he is right now.
Right.
But it's not like
Targon adjacent.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of our characters were just like born and raised in X, born and raised in Y, and fights for them as well, and all of that. This is just a place he is right now, and he's in a circumstance, and it seems open to like change and development.
And it's pretty complicated because a lot of his battles he's been fighting are void, and it's things that do threaten him and his persona and his work, but he kind of wishes Targon would have asked first.
Sure.
Yeah,
that would have been nice.
The things he's doing aren't necessarily against what he would like to do. Just he would do them differently.
Is that all? Is like all that like wonder and almost affection that he felt once upon a time? Is that gone now because they screwed him, or is that still there? Is he maybe even more fond than he realizes?
I think that's probably where he would go.
Okay.
I think he's mad right now.
Sure.
Especially because he's sensing something.
But it's not like his kids.
He's getting free. No, they're not his kids. I think they're supplanting him, and he's like, they'll grow up to be better than me. No. No. He's got to put him in
they're
their place.
fighting right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But maybe in a
maybe
couple
he won't
million
kill
years.
every single one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
And a point Matt made earlier on was that this character is so ancient and so long lived that this is just a blink of the eye for him. Like, yeah, it's been annoying, but at the end of things, he'll go on with his business elsewhere in the cosmos, and it won't really be that big of a hindrance just because he's lived so long.
So to get back, we've talked a little bit about what it is like to be Aurelion Sol. I'm kind of curious about the experience of both playing him and seeing him in game. So looking at his kit, like there's some strange stuff going on there, and I'm imagining in my head this guy doing some strange things in team fights. Like what? Obviously, there's kind of a core loop to this kit. As Patrick mentioned, it's get next to people and mess them up, and hug them, give them the hug of death.
Yeah,
not too close. Not too close.
Can you talk a little bit about just like what we're going for in terms of like what's the term we use? Strategic
niche.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
What is Aurelion Sol's strategic niche?
So this character is actually a little bit different in that we didn't focus primarily on strategic niche first. Some characters that we've made recently have had that focus. Like Kindred was definitely like, what if there was a marksman in the jungle? That's crazy. This guy came more because we knew we generally start out character development with we want to make a mage or an assassin, and then you figure out, okay, what's different about this mage or assassin? In this case, we started out with we want to make a dragon. So I sort of navigated that by trying to make the coolest, best dragon that I could, and didn't worry too much about like how is he, completely different from Karthus. But I think I ended up with a kit that feels really different from anything else in the game, and I think that's sort of the driver of that uniqueness, is that you pick this character when you want to play this character's style.
And what is that style?
So I guess going through like where things came from, because I could just read the kit description, but the first piece of this of the kit that's in the game now that we kind of came to was the orbiting stars, and it was this idea. We tried a bunch of stuff with like flight, like this guy flies around a lot in team fights and sort of has all these like multiple dashes or things like that. And it ended up being like, well, you can't target spells very easily while you're like controlling flight or jumping around a lot. So we ended up with lots of spells that were, self-centered, but targeted around him or things like that. And one of the spells that kind of fell out of that, the flight thing didn't really pan out, but this spell, the orbiting stars, was really kind of cool. So we kind of played it up and increased the range and decreased the range and played around with how it worked.
More stars, less stars.
Yeah, like there were a time when there were like 5 of them, and it was just like no one can deal with this. But the idea that this character, so that by itself, there was a version of the kit that basically just had the orbiting stars, and we did some lane tests up to like level 6 or 10, and it was fun. It was fun just trying to hit people and them dodging out of the way. So we knew we were on to something then when it was like, this guy doesn't need any more abilities. Cool. Okay, let's add some more abilities. So like I was talking about earlier, like what makes a dragon different from a wizard in a dragon suit? And I think one of those things is this idea of power centered around them, effortless power. So the fact that he has his passive is just, he has these stars and they're just on for free, is part of that. He's not casting a spell. He just has these stars.
And to speak to that for a second, there was also the moment where we realized that he was more than just a star dragon or a dragon from space or a cosmic dragon. He was the one who made stars. And we called him Starforger. I think that's when it really became something that is draconic, but also more than draconic at the same time.
Yeah, he was this creative
dragon-esque
force.
Being.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep repeating
Dragon-esque
all
celestial
I'm picking up.
entity.
DEB.
I mean, so folks at home can do that replacement in your head. I'm going to keep saying dragon. Anyway.
No, I'm just...
but yeah, so that definitely was like, and these things were his essence. They were these things that he made, and that it was not just that he made stars, but he was made of the stuff that stars are made of, I guess.
Yeah, he's just like another expression of their form.
Right.
Right. He kind of melds them. I want to say, I want to take some time to honestly say I think you've done a really, really cool job with this character. And
Thank you.
This is something that just to gush for a little bit, because I play the game so much, and I try to be very much like a student and player of the game first. For Ilaoi and Jin and now Aurelion Sol, there is such an excitement for me that we have managed to nail their style of play so closely to their personality. I mean, we were here, Dylan, talking about Jin and how Jin is very particular, right? And he wants everything to go like a certain kind of way, right? And he plays out these big scenes in his head, and that's how team fights really work out for him, right? It's like, I need to mark this person, I need to hit them with the fourth shot, it has to be by my design. And Alawi is another character that's like, I put all my faith into this god that I, the player, can't see. And so when you team fight with that character, it's like, all right, I'm really, really close to death, but I'm going to press this button and we're going to win in this instant because I believed. And Aurelion's soul is so much that everything is actually kind of centered around him. And there are times where you can feel bad about that. Like, oh, great, I got to carry this guy into a fight and I got to like set him up. But when you do create the position to let him do his thing, it is honestly effortless. It's like he's not even really trying to kill the opposing team. He's just there and the stars are doing their work. And when I saw that happen in playtest, I was really starting to get really taken with the kind of champion that he's become. So I couldn't be more excited about Aurelion Sol and his place, especially compared to the kinds of work that we used to do.
No, thank you very much.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that speaks some to what his strategic niche is that he can, if he gets in the right place and he gets ahead enough, he can zone a fight. He can zone out a whole fight really easily, right? Because he's just like, I'm here. What are you gonna do about it? With these stars
his
orbiting
presence
around
kind of
him.
extends beyond his model and his form, almost in the same way his influence might.
Right.
Which I think is very, very cool, and I'm happy that it lined up that way.
There's a lot of funny times where playing as Aurelion, you'll be focusing on killing that guy over there, and your stars will just be swinging around and hitting other people you're not even paying attention to, and it's sort of almost accidental. Like,
You killed my support. Oh,
he's like, oh, did I?
do that?
There was someone there. Oh, like it's sort of accidental, but it does fit really well with sort of the mindset that the character would be in. I think.
For Aurelion, it was Tuesday.
Yep.
That team fight was the most important team fight of your life.
I hope his
Wow.
pentakill line is like, really?
Yeah. I was kind of expecting a little bit more.
Thank you, Mr. Julia. That was very good. Good performance. So yeah, I guess back to the kit. I guess I don't know.
I mean, I'm kind of just wondering, like, what the experience. Like, I think,
Oh, yeah.
I think we've done such a great job in line with what Patrick was saying, and that sounds bad. That's not to toot ourselves. The point is that
Tootin'.
yeah, tooting
Rootin'
ourselves.
tootin'.
Oh God. The point is that as Champion Dev has extended, kind of the length through which it takes place, I feel like we're doing a better job of really making sure that they feel awesome and impactful in every ways. Like, I mean, let's face it, back in the day when there was 2 champions every month or more than that, like 4 in a month at one point, they weren't all super individual. And like, through the efforts of the Champ Up team, we've been fleshing that out over time. But in this case, with these new ones, it really does feel like we're creating whole new like tech and just experiences even for these new ones, and I see that with Aurelion, just through the combination of the AoE abilities, the whole like charging up move speed while moving in the same direction but losing it on turns. That stuff is so not something I'm used to in the game. I'm really excited to see just how it creates totally different fight experiences.
Yeah, I think in recent years you've been much more willing to take risks and do things that seem out there. And I think a lot of character designs nowadays start with someone being like, what rule can I break?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What's the thing? And this is, I remember, because I want to say this almost started with like Thresh, right? Thresh was like, what if I just give dashes to people that don't have them?
Yeah.
Right. And people were like, well, that'll be broken. And it's like, yes, it will. You can break stuff too. We can all kind of live in this world where we're making crazy things happen. I like to think of it as back in the day, and this is not to knock that thing, but back in the day when it was a new character every 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I used to think we were kind of making action figures at that time. It's like, you're like, I kind of like the snapshot of what this guy's trying to do, and now it feels like we're really making like movies, T-shirts, like things that you can really hold on to about the characters.
We've
like
gone from action figures to T-shirts.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you can follow that metaphor for me, because I think that's the way I think about it. Is like Echo is one of my favorite characters of all time, and that's like someone that I want. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you got it.
Sorry.
You found the time pun.
He's the time boy.
Yeah.
No, but it's like that's a character that I feel like I want to see that character in Super Smash Brothers, right? Like I want to see that character. I want the T-shirt. I want the movie of Echo's upbringing, right? Where it kind of used to be. It's like, well, do you really like Jarvan? cool. Well, we hope you like the next one that comes out and the next one that comes out. And people could kind of pick and choose then.
Yeah, characters were often like a weapon. And it was like, do you like hammers? This guy does hammer things. And yeah, I think a lot of it did come down to just the fact that it was a 2-week release cycle and everything was sort of unknown territory. And honestly, there were a lot of things that hadn't been done yet that were just like, oh yeah, that. Let's do that thing. Like, Jarvan's like, we haven't put a ring of terrain about anybody. Let's do that.
Yeah, Darius was like, we don't really have a big axe. Every game has a big axe.
Yeah.
Let's do our big axe.
Maybe just chops a guy really good. That's new and unique.
Dario Chop Man.
Yeah.
Doing a mega chop.
Yeah, I mean, bringing it back to now, like, I think the cool thing there, too, is that whole approach of like, oh, what rule can we break? That's actually just become possible more recently. Like that wasn't something we could do back in the day. Like that level of resource and just kind of like capability wasn't always, inherent to each champion pod. Now though, we do have that, and it's like, we're going to go totally outside the box with this guy, do something that is going to require us to create new things, like we're seeing with Aurelion Sol.
So I want to, we're probably about out of time, but Matt, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I kind of have a last hit for both of you.
Uh-oh.
Matt, I want to know what is your favorite line of Aurelion Sol? What do you think is the most quintessential?
Do you want my honest favorite line?
We want
your honest favorite. What's
and we
yours?
want the other one too.
Yeah.
I want to hear it.
I think he has one line about talking about how beautiful it is to make a star. And it catches me every time because it's easy to think of him as a giant monster or a giant entity coming to this planet to wreak havoc. But our voice actor, he just found the vulnerability in the character. And he just did a great job. And all of his lines, by the way, the ones that work the best, in my opinion, are the ones where the note was, say it with jazz hands. And he did. So you can imagine that, somebody saying it with jazz hands.
I love the way Theo works out.
And then my last hit for you, Luke, is what play are you most looking forward to seeing on the subreddit when Aurelion goes live?
Oh man, I mean, I think the obvious answer is the EQ combo where he just throws out this Q and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That was one of the rules. It's like, what if this thing got bigger and just kind of didn't stop getting bigger if you just chased it down? So I'm waiting on the person who like throws a Q from their base and just chases it all the way to the enemy fountain
and just get pentakills with the enormous thing.
Yeah, and like it's like a key fight, and they just like show up and just like stun the whole screen. Because you have to call that shot so far in advance that's going to be really really hype when it happens.
Yeah, it's like what if you were the Jinx rocket in a sense, right? It's like you become the Ash Arrow. Yeah, which I think is super cool.
Actually, I want to change my answer. Is that okay?
Yeah.
My favorite line for Dragon, for Aurelion Sol, is his "Choose Me." It was the one. Usually, we write a ton of "Choose Me" lines. It's the hardest one of the hardest lines to write for a champion.
Yeah. Sure, first
and
impression.
his was the easiest, and he just says, "Naturally." One word.
All right,
He's such a tool, but we all love him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thanks for coming out, guys. Really appreciate your time going on this spiritual journey with us. I kind of got the sense, Matt, that you cry while playing this guy.
I'm sad that it's over. Can we just keep talking about Dragon more?
Let's get out there and play him. That's what we need to do.
He's like, Matt's going to be sitting in the fountain as he plays him. Just he's too busy typing in all chat. Look at how beautiful he is.
He's just going to be whispering him to himself.
So
Naturally.
Every now and then he'll pull. If he gets a hit with the star, he will say, "Boop."
There it is. That's got it. That's the Easter egg. That's the hidden thing for people.
There we go. All right. Thanks so much for coming out, guys. And thank you to all you out there for listening to this episode of the podcast. As always, going to ask you to like, subscribe, tell us what sucked, tell us what's great, all that type of stuff so we can keep getting better at this. Other than that, we'll see you next time.